have low vision or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publisher. For more information, just visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. Now, welcome to our Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We now present a reading of articles and features from the USA Today for Tuesday, April the 14th of 2026. And your readers today are Jody
and Alan Blackburn.
And I'm going to start you out on our front page. Here's my first article. U.S. seals off Iran's crucial Gulf ports. Trump dials up threats and Tehran decries piracy. Oil prices surged hours before the U.S. military began blocking the maritime traffic at the Iranian ports, a move that came after peace talks between warring nations broke down over the weekend. Now, maritime access restrictions on the Iranian ports and coastal areas took effect April 13th at 10 a.m., said the United Kingdom Maritime Trade Operations, a Royal Navy-run organization that facilitates communication between military and commercial shipping in the Persian Gulf region. The UK organization said in an advisory that the restrictions encompass the entirety of the Iranian coastline, including ports and energy infrastructure, but they do not apply to neutral ships who are passing through the Strait of Hormuz. Vessels may encounter military ships in the crucial waterway, and a limited grace period has been granted to neutral ships within the Iranian ports, the advisory said. Now, shortly after the U.S. blockade began, Trump threatened to attack any of Iran's speedboats or fast attack ships that approach the blockade on the country's ports, warning if any of these ships come anywhere close to our blockade, they will be immediately eliminated using the same system of kill that we use against drug dealers on boats at sea, Trump wrote on Truth Social. Iran threatens its neighbors' ports. Iranian military spokesperson Ibrahim Zolfagari, hours before the blockade, said if Iran's ports are threatened, no ports in the Persian Gulf or Gulf of Oman would remain secure. He said any blockades of vessels in the international waters would amount to piracy, Iranian state media has reported. Oil prices now soar after the talks fail. Oil prices early on April 13th, they jumped back above $100 a barrel as Brent crude futures gained $7.03 or 7.4%. Now the average price of gas in the U.S. was $4.12 a gallon, according to AAA. Before the war began, the average price was about $2.98 a gallon. Trump has long said a bump in U.S. gas prices would be short-lived, but he told Fox News' Sunday briefing that prices could stay high through November midterm elections. The latest jump in oil and gas prices, it comes after the U.S.-Iran peace talks in Islamabad, Pakistan, ended without a deal after more than 20 hours of negotiations. The first peace talks between the two countries in 47 years came just days after that ceasefire began on April the 8th. Now, the Pope has no fear of Trump. Also, on April 13th, Pope Leo said he has no fear of the Trump administration, and he vowed to continue speaking out against the war in Iran after Trump criticized the American pontiff for his views on war and immigration. I have no fear of the Trump administration or speaking out loudly of the message of the gospel, which is what I believe I'm here to do, Pope Leo told the reporters. The comments from the leader of the Catholic Church, they come after Trump, late on April the 12th, he posted a lengthy message on social media criticizing the Pope as weak on crime and terrible for foreign policy. Leo should get his act together as the Pope. He should use common sense, stop catering to the radical left, and focus on being a great Pope, not a politician, Trump had written. Now, the Pope said this month's threat from Trump to destroy the Iranian civilization, it was unacceptable, according to Reuters. He has also called for deep reflection about the way migrants are being treated in the U.S. under our Trump administration.
Older and younger Republicans differ in their views over the Iran war. In casting his ballot for President Donald Trump, Alabama resident Gray Holland said a big factor was his belief that Trump would avoid another war in the Middle East. He really ran on the concept of no wars, Holland said. Now the United States is at war with Iran, and Holland, a 25-year-old Republican from Birmingham, is not happy with the president's decision. I'd rather not be involved in another foreign war with Iran or whoever else it may be in the Middle East at the time, Holland said. I just think we should stay out of it and worry about ourselves. Polls show most Americans disapprove of the Iran war. While the older Republicans have largely stood behind Trump, younger ones are much more likely than their elders to oppose it. A Pew Research Center survey released in March found that less than half, 49% of Republicans and Republican-leaning independents aged 18 to 19 approve of Trump's handling of Iran. Overall, 69% of Republicans and those who lean Republican approve of how Trump is handling the Iran war, with support increasing by age. Among Republicans and Republican leaners 65 and older, 84% approve of Trump's record on Iran, while 79% approve in the 50s to 64 age group and 60% among those 30 to 49. Among all Americans, the poll found just 37% support Trump's approach to Iran. Facing deep skepticism about the war at home, Trump has pushed to end the conflict, announcing a ceasefire on April 7th and negotiations in Pakistan to find a permanent settlement. The ceasefire appears to be on shaky ground, though, as both sides accuse the other of not abiding by the agreement. The prospect of more fighting remains an outcome that could further divide Republicans heading into the November midterm election. Trump made gains with younger voters in a successful 2024 campaign, winning 39% of the voters under 30 compared with 35% in 2020. But now some of his younger supporters are growing disillusioned by his decision to launch a war that they think violates his campaign promises. Trump said, "I'm not going to start a war, I'm going to stop wars." Trump campaigned as a staunch critic of previous U.S. wars in the Middle East and has lately been accused of betrayal by some who subscribe to his anti-interventionist America First pledges. Prominent Trump supporters such as podcaster Joe Rogan, whose large audience includes many younger men, has been critical of the Iran war. "It just seems so insane based on what he ran on," said Rogan, who endorsed Trump in 2024. "I mean, this is why a lot of people feel betrayed, right?" Holland said Trump's campaign rhetoric about the Middle East conflicts was at the forefront of my decision to vote for him. "I just thought we should stay out of anything over there at the time. I thought he would do it, and then he hasn't. So it definitely diminishes my opinion of him." Some young Republicans told USA Today they're concerned about the cost of living and would rather see Trump focus on economic issues than Iran. "There are so many other problems at home we need to focus on other than Iran." Nevada Republican Morgan Kern said her top concern is providing for her family. "We most definitely need to protect the American people, but sending young men and women over to fight a war is not on the top of my list of priorities."
And now here's your page one cover story. Sandwich generation's expenses pile up. Families are struggling to meet soaring costs of care for their kids and their parents. Deanna Atkins, who's 28, she filed for bankruptcy back in February. Between taking her mother-in-law nearly 3 years ago and then having her first child right after that, she said her credit card debt became unmanageable. Her 66-year-old mother-in-law was scammed into homelessness before moving in with Atkins and her husband in Florida. She said, so Atkins bought her clothes and furniture and then things for the new baby. Each month after paying rent and car loans, Atkins says she doesn't have any money left. "I just couldn't keep up with the payments, so I just let everything go delinquent until I had to deal with it." Sandwich generation caregivers like Atkins are out of tens of thousands of dollars every year in care costs. Some families spend money directly on care, and other families like Atkins, they lose wages by just stepping away from work to care for their loved ones. Other families spend on care and simultaneously cut their work hours, and that compounds their losses. The bottom line is, many sandwich generations families, their bottom lines are in the red. A new study from Choice Mutual, that's a life insurance agency, found the average yearly cost to support both child care and senior care is just under $104,000, and the average family accumulates $64,000 in annual debt from these circumstances. Care.com ran its analysis, breaking down the average child care and senior care rates weekly. It found the average daycare cost per week for 2 kids is $585. The average senior care cost for 1 adult is $795. So that's $1,380 a week. Parents are being pushed well beyond their limits by these demands of caregiving, says Brad Wilson, who's the CEO of Care.com. If this continues, care pressures risk pushing more parents to cut back or step away from their careers. That will only deepen the financial strain and the emotional stress that traps them in a system that is continuing now to fail them. Care costs and debt, they have a ripple effect. Nearly 1 in 4 American adults are in this sandwich generation, according to a Pew Research Center survey. Several recent reports found the group, which is mostly women, is struggling emotionally, health-wise, and financially. The Choice Mutual study found the sandwich generation is under the most financial pressure in Hawaii, Vermont, Oklahoma, Montana, and Maine. In Vermont, child and senior care costs $138,752,000 annually. That exceeded their median household income, which is $137,525. A 2025 study from the Finance of America, that's a mortgage lender, of about 2,000 adults found 69% of the sandwich caregivers feel financially exhausted, and 76% of those struggle with the fears and emotions associated with caring for a parent. People are also having children later in life, so they found themselves caring for their aging parent and their young children at the same time. Says Lakeland Eichenberger, who's a gerontologist and caregiver advocate at Home Instead. That's a senior in-home care network. The financial impact of that, it has a ripple effect. It's preventing them from saving for their own retirement, or perhaps it's taking away from their income to do things like family vacations or even just save for their child's tuition. Juggling child and senior care can feel so overwhelming. Eichenberg said that many in the sandwich generations, they're turning down job promotions or just stepping back from part-time work. Having open conversations about your care early on is the key. Now, a lot of adult children, including Atkins and Davenport, they want to promise their parents that they will never put them in a nursing home, Eichenberg said. But for many families, well, that's just not realistic. That actually is doing more harm than good because we don't know what the future holds, she says. There are a lot of different care facilities and in-home care options for aging parents, Eichenberg says. It's important to have open, honest conversations early so that the sandwich generation caregivers can plan accordingly and then avoid financial stress along the way. Home Instead, that has an online guide to help the families have these conversations. I think so many families wait until they're in a crisis to make any kind of decision around here, she said. Then a lot of times in those crisis moments, you have more limited options. So you might end up spending more money because you haven't had the time to look at the options, weigh the financial implications. You just have to address their immediate need. Now, they have a big picture on the front page of this sandwich idea. It's a huge stacked sandwich with layers of bread and cheese and meat and dollar bills all sticking out in between. It's like 10 layers high. Then at the bottom, they have a picture of the family that they were talking about, with her, who's taking care of her parents and her young children. And it says, unable to keep up with the cost of caring for her young child, her mother-in-law, who has dementia, Deanna Adkins, who's pictured on the left of the picture, is shown with her husband, Casey Adkins, and he's pictured on the right, and then their little 18-month-old son, Duncan, he's pictured in the center, and they all have matching shirts on. They look very family-like. They filed for bankruptcy back in February.
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 12:13. Automatic registry for the military draft is in the works. Here's who may be affected by the changes. Many men will soon be automatically registered into the U.S. military draft pool, according to the federal agency that oversees the system. Eligible men are already required to register with the Selected Service System, which oversees the database of people who could be called for service in the event of a military draft. The agency is now moving to an automatic registration process rather than requiring men to sign up manually. And here's what to know about the new military draft registration process and who is eligible. Virtually all male U.S. citizens and immigrants ages 18 to 25 are required to register for the draft, even those who believe they would be exempt from serving, according to the Selective Service website. Eligible men will soon be automatically registered for the draft instead of having to sign up manually. Men who are serving in the military on full-time active duty continuously from ages 18 to 26 do not have to register for the draft. Those who are hospitalized or incarcerated continuously on or before their 18th birthday through age 25 also are exempt. Men who are on non-immigrant visas are exempt, according to the Selected Service website, as long as they remain on a valid visa up until they turn 26. The Military Selected Service Act only requires draft registrations for men. Women can enlist in active duty combat in order to serve. And what is the draft age limit? Eligible men must register within 30 days of their 18th birthday, according to the Selective Service website. The agency said it accepts registrations after that, up until a man reaches his 26th birthday. And when does automatic military draft registration take effect? The agency will implement the switch to automatic registration by December, according to the website. And what changed? The agency is moving to an automatic registration process, rather than requiring men to sign up manually. According to the SSS website, the change transfers responsibility for registration from individual men to the Selective Service through integration with federal data sources. Does this mean there's going to be a military draft? The war and current ceasefire in Iran has sparked renewed questions about whether the United States will enact a military draft. In a March 8th interview, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said, "Bringing back the draft is not part of the current plan right now." But she added that Presidential Donald Trump keeps his options on the table. There is no draft at present, and there has not been an active military draft since 1973, according to the Selective Service system. Returning to an active draft would require Congress to amend the Military Selective Service Act. And what has Trump said about a military draft? A USA Today review of Trump's appearances and interviews in early March indicated he had not commented publicly on the possibility of enacting a draft around that time. But in a September 2024 Truth Social post during the campaign, Trump described a vote for his opponent, former Vice President Kamala Harris, as a vote for bringing back the draft. He said, "A vote for President Donald Trump is a vote for prosperity and peace."
Orban's ouster is to shake up Europe and the world. Hungary's result is also a defeat for Trump and Putin. At first glance, the expected but still shocking ouster of Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, long considered a poster boy for Europe's populists, and President Donald Trump's Make America Great Again movement, it seemed like a symbolic win for the Trump resistance. Vice President J.D. Vance was sent to the country for an 11th-hour rally of support and did not succeed. Internet memes sprung up immediately from Trump opponents, latching onto the "I'll have what she's having" moment from the movie When Harry Met Sally. Now, but more broadly, the end of Orbanism, it could bring big changes in Europe and in the world order. The result may ultimately shift a deadlocked conversation around war funding for Ukraine and send shockwaves toward his agitation-prone backers in Moscow. Orban's 16 years in power, it came to an end April 12th after the challenger Peter Magyar persuaded a large majority of Hungarians to back him in a closely watched election. The result casts aside a government whose domestic and international policies have inspired populist leaders across the region and beyond. Orban's self-described liberal democracy set the pace for what its opponents and many experts describe as a political experiment, eroding checks on power, defanging the media and the courts, quashing minorities' rights, steering government contracts towards his family's business empire, and publicly railing against immigration while quietly encouraging it from some countries and some industries. So here's what Orban's loss and Magyar's win means for Hungary, Europe, and his Trump-aligned admirers in Washington. Righting Hungary's dire economy. Hungary's vote was about more than domestic politics. The result will be felt beyond its borders, but Magyar has first and foremost been handed a mandate to deliver far-reaching change to Hungary's economy. Hungary's economy expanded by only 0.4% in the year 2025. That's far behind, for example, fellow European Union member Poland's, which was 3.6%. Inflation has been rising faster than salaries, eroding living standards. At the same time, public services like healthcare and education have been in steady decline. Now, meanwhile, Orban and his close associates have become conspicuously wealthy, and most single-bid government contracts are now concentrated within a small circle of recipients. A swing back to Europe. European diplomats hope that Magyar's win will lead to an about-face on Orban's increasingly unpopular, openly anti-European Union and anti-Ukraine policies. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, he posted a video of himself on the phone with Magyar captioned with the words, "Welcome back to Europe." German Chancellor Friedrich Merz said the results showed Europe was resilient against Russian propaganda and other influences. We want to be a country that is no one's vassal, where achievement counts, and a country whose citizens can count on their government, Magyar said in his victory speech along the banks of the River Danube in Budapest. Now, he was referring in part to Orban's persistent cozying up with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Orban's loss is a loss for Putin and Trump. Orban's defeat is a defeat for his international supporters. Now, that includes Putin and Trump, who dispatched Vance to Hungary in the days before the vote with promises of major U.S. investment. There's no question Trump has long been an Orban fan. He has called him a strong and effective leader and praised his tough stance on immigration. Orban, in turn, has been one of Trump's most vocal supporters in Europe. He endorsed Trump in his elections and aligned himself closely with Trump's positions on issues like migration and nationalism, and expressed deep skepticism toward liberal international institutions. Pavel Zerka, who's a senior policy fellow at the Berlin-based think tank called European Council on Relations, he said the election could mark a real turning point for Donald Trump's culture war in Europe. Now, over the past 2 years, he said, Trump has tried to project political influence across the continent by backing ideological allies, attacking opponents, and undermining trust in the European Union. Orban's Hungary was at the heart of this strategy, Zerka has said. He added that Magyar's victory should be a moment of confidence for the pro-European forces across the continent that illustrates that they are not powerless in the face of Trump's political brand. He said it may also force parties ideologically close to MAGA, such as Germany's Alternative für Deutschland and France's Rassemblement National, to reconsider how closely they want to align themselves with Trump. In the current context, especially after his controversial foreign policy decisions, that association might become more of a liability than an asset.
Smallwell suspends his run for California governor. The lawmaker is accused of sexual misconduct. Representative Eric Smallwell announced he has suspended his campaign for California governor after several women accused him of sexual assault and misconduct. Quote, I am suspending my campaign for governor. To my family, staff, friends, and supporters, I am deeply sorry for the mistakes in judgment I've made in my past. I will fight the serious false allegations that have been made, but that's my fight, not a campaign's. The Democratic congressman said that on April 12th in a statement on X. The announcement comes after several prominent Democrats withdrew their support for the congressman and called on Smallwell, the Democratic frontrunner in the polls, to drop out of California's gubernatorial race. Last week, the San Francisco Chronicle and CNN reported that a woman who had worked in Smallwell's office accused him of 2 non-consensual sexual encounters. CNN also reported 3 other women accused Swalwell of sexual misconduct. He has denied the allegations, calling them absolutely false and vowing to fight them. Swalwell, who is 45 years old, was first elected to Congress in 2012, representing a Northern California district just outside Oakland, where he was a prosecutor in Alameda County. He was a long-shot candidate in the 2020 Democratic presidential primaries before dropping out and endorsing the eventual winner, Joe Biden. In a statement April 10th, 3 Democratic House leaders, Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Whip Catherine Clark, and Caucus Chair Peter Aguilar, urged Swalwell to end his bid for governor. Following the incredibly disturbing sexual assault accusations against Congressman Eric Swalwell, they said, we call for a swift investigation of these incidents and for the congressman to immediately end his campaign to be California's next governor, the Democrats said in a statement. This is unacceptable of anyone, certainly not an elected official, and must be taken seriously. Separately, former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said she advised Swalwell to step aside in the race to replace Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom, who will term out in 2027. The young woman who has made serious allegations against Congressman Swalwell must be respected and heard. This extremely sensitive matter must be appropriately investigated with full transparency and accountability, Pelosi said in a statement. As I discussed with Congressman Swalwell, it is clear that it is best done outside of a gubernatorial campaign. In separate TV interviews, April 12th, Democratic Representatives Pramila Jayapal, Ro Khanna, and Eugene Vindman said Swalwell should quit Congress. An open letter released later April 12th and signed by more than 50 of Swalwell's staffers also called on him to resign from Congress and drop out of the gubernatorial race, calling the allegations serious and incredible. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office confirmed April 11th that it was investigating the sexual assault allegations against Swalwell, according to Reuters. The New York Times reported that the District Attorney's Office was looking into an allegation that Swalwell assaulted a woman in New York City in 2024. The accusation comes from former staff member, according to the Washington Post. Reuters also reported that the Department of Homeland Security's U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services said it is investigating allegations that Swalwell illegally employed a Brazilian nanny. The Politico first reported on that inquiry. These allegations are serious. The U.S. CIS has reverted this matter to the Department of Homeland Security Law Enforcement Investigation, spokesman told Reuters. In later news, Swalwell has decided he will resign from his position as representative.
Judge tosses Trump's lawsuit against the WSJ. The newspaper stands by its story of note to Epstein. A judge has dismissed President Donald Trump's defamation lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal for reporting that he sent Jeffrey Epstein a lewd birthday note, but said Trump may amend the lawsuit and then refile it within 2 weeks. The ruling turned on whether Trump had made allegations in his lawsuit that, if true, would mean the Journal defamed him in a story on July 17th, reporting that he had sent the late sex offender a lewd, cryptic letter for his 50th birthday. Now, on the day the article was published, Trump called the letter a fake on social media, and he vowed to sue the newspaper. Then the next day, he made good on that promise, but the Journal, it has stood by its reporting. What the article says is true, it said on September 22nd, court filing requesting Trump's lawsuit be dismissed. The newspaper noted that Epstein's estate provided the House Oversight Committee with a birthday book containing an identical letter, which the committee has publicly released. The letter was one of many collected by Ghislaine Maxwell, a close associate of Epstein's, for a birthday album in 2003. The Journal reported, citing documents it had reviewed. Now, it includes Trump's name and several typewritten lines framed with an outline of a naked woman's body with Donald as a signature mimicking pubic hair. Maxwell is serving a 20-year prison sentence after she was convicted of sex trafficking a minor to Epstein. Epstein died in 2019 while waiting his own sex trafficking trial. He was convicted back in 2008 of 2 Florida prostitution crimes, including one involving the minors. Florida federal judge Darren Gales ruled that Trump didn't make a plausible allegation in his lawsuit, that the Journal and its owner, who is Rupert Murdoch, published the story with actual malice, referring to publishing something while either knowing it was false or with a reckless disregard for whether it was false. Trump can amend his lawsuit to address the question and then refile it by April the 27th, Gales has said. Trump had a long personal friendship with Epstein, but it ruptured around 2004. Trump said on social media in July that he had warned Murdoch, who is a political conservative, that the letter was a fake and that he would sue the Journal if it published it.
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 12:28, and it's on to the money section. Report: war-hit countries suffer economic losses. Conflict drives currency depreciation and inflation. Wars cause large and persistent economic losses in countries where fighting takes place, with output declining by roughly 7% over 5 years on average, and economic scars lasting for more than a decade, said the International Monetary Fund in a research released on April 8th. The IMF, the International Monetary Fund, examined the cost of active conflicts, now at the highest level since the end of World War II, and the macroeconomic consequences of sharp increases in military spending in 2 chapters of its forthcoming World Economic Outlook. The full report will be released on today, April 14th. The chapters do not address the Middle East war or the 2-week ceasefire announced by President Donald Trump late on April 7th, but offer a comprehensive look at wartime economies back to 1946 and weapons spending data from 164 countries. In 2024, the latest year for which data is available, more than 35 countries experienced conflict in their territory, and about 45% of the world's population lived in countries affected by conflict. Beyond their devastating human toll, wars impose large and lasting economic costs and pose difficult macroeconomic trade-offs, especially for those countries where the fighting is taking place, the IMF said in a blog released at the same time. Countries engaged in foreign conflicts can avert physical destruction on their own soil and avoid large economic losses, but neighboring countries or key trading partners will feel the shock, the IMF said. Output losses from conflicts persist even after a decade and typically exceed those associated with financial crises or severe natural disasters, the IMF chapter said. The IMF is poised to cut its global growth forecast and raise its inflation predictions as a result of the Iran war. The managing director, Kristalina Georgieva, told Reuters on April 6th. On April 7th, World Bank President Ajay Banga said the war would result in some degree of slower growth and higher inflation, regardless of how quickly it ended. The IMF said conflicts contributed to sustained exchange rate depreciation, reserve losses, and rising inflation, as widening external imbalances amplified macroeconomic stress. Military spending surges globally. Rising geopolitical tensions and more frequent conflicts have sparked big jumps in military spending, with about half of the world's countries increasing their military budgets over the past 5 years, and more increases coming as NATO countries boost weapon spending to 5% of gross domestic product by 2035. Arms sales by the world's largest weapons makers, many of whom are based in the United States, have doubled in real terms over 2 decades, the IMF found. The IMF authors found that large defense spending booms had become more frequent, and especially in emerging market and developing economies, with typical booms lasting 2.5 years, and military spending surging by about 2.7% of the gross domestic product. About 2/3 of these military buildups were financed by higher deficits, which could boost economic activity in the medium term, but also increased inflation and created medium-term challenges. That meant buildups need to be closely coordinated with monetary policy, the IMF said. Military buildups strained budgets. On average, fiscal deficits worsened by about 2.6% of GDP, and public debt increased by about 7 percentage points within 3 years of the start of a buildup. About 1/4 of those buildups were financed by reprioritizing spending, often leading to a sharp decline in government spending on social programs, said Andressa Lagerborg, an IMF economist. Output gains were also smaller when the arms were purchased from foreign suppliers, the IMF said. Focusing on public investment in equipment and infrastructure would expand market size, support economies of scale, and strengthen industrial capacity while limiting the loss of orders to overseas suppliers. IMF economist Hippolyte Balima, one of the key authors of the chapter, said the data also showed that peace was fragile, and with about 40% of countries relapsing into conflict within 5 years. Early steps to stabilize economies, restructure debt, secure international support, and implement domestic reforms were critical to lay the groundwork for solid recoveries.
Prices for first-class stamps, that could soon increase. The new rate would be 82 cents, and that'd be effective July the 12th. As the U.S. Postal Service continues to face financial difficulties, the price of a first-class stamp, it could soon increase by 4 cents, they said. The proposed adjustments, which the Postal Regulatory Commission must approve, will see the old price of 78 cents replaced with a new rate of 82 cents on July the 12th. In the midst of severe financial crisis facing the Postal Service and the continued rising operational costs, the Postal Service is using all available tools, including available regulatory pricing authority, to ensure that we can continue to fulfill our universal service obligation and serve the American public. So here's what you need to know. Increases amid financial woes. The increase comes less than a month after USPS officials warned that a price increase was on the way. During an appearance in front of Congress that was back in March, Postmaster General David Steiner suggested that a price hike on first-class stamps could have gone as high as 95 cents. Now, for months, Steiner has also warned that the USPS's financial future is uncertain. In an interview with Reuters and the Associated Press, Steiner said that without congressional action to lift the agency's $15 billion statutory debt limit, USPS could struggle to pay its vendors or its employees by February of 2027. The borrowing cap was set back in 1990. So finally, why is USPS struggling? USPS has posted losses in nearly every year since the year 2007, according to the U.S. Government Accountability Office. Now totals about $109 billion through fiscal year of 2024. Mail volume has fallen sharply as more Americans move online. USPS delivered 112 billion pieces of mail in the fiscal year 2024. Now that's down nearly 50% from its 2006 year peak, according to the Postal Regulatory Commission.
So it's time to stock up on forever stamps, I guess, huh? Muslims struggle to avoid loans with interest. Knowing where to start, whom to trust, is hard. When Abdullah Sulaiman, a Muslim immigrant, set out to buy his first home in the United States, he was determined to avoid riba, the Islamic term for interest, which is forbidden in Islamic law or Sharia. After exploring Islamic institutions' alternative financing options, he felt skeptical. It just didn't feel Islamic, said Sulaiman, who's 53 years old, of Tampa Bay, Florida. No matter how much the banks framed it, it still felt like another way to collect interest, he said. Sulaiman eventually chose a conventional mortgage and paid it off within 5 years to minimize the interest. Sulaiman isn't alone in his skepticism. His experience reflects an issue within Muslim American communities. The Islamic guidance against riba is often ignored due to lack of alternatives or because some banks offering no interest options are perceived as untrustworthy. There are an estimated 25 to 45 Islamic financial institutions in the United States, up from only a handful in the 1990s. But with about 3.45 million Muslim Americans in the country, that still leaves those who wish to follow Sharia's moral code with fewer than half the banking options of other Americans per capita. That can make knowing where to start or whom to trust more difficult. Home buyers usually apply to a bank for a mortgage when purchasing a home, which means they take out a loan for the full cost of the house or the principal, and they pay the bank both the principal plus a percentage-based interest over the term of the loan, usually for 15 or 30 years. While riba-based financing specifics can vary per organization, the general model called musharaka, or risk sharing, creates a joint venture between a homeowner and a financing company to purchase a home. This means that the financier and homeowner both share risks, cost, and profit. In order to make this work, put simply, the financier first purchases the property at market value and rents it out to the future homeowner, who pays a higher agreed-upon price in monthly increments until they have paid for the home. This method allows for both the financier to both make a profit while the homeowner participates in a trade rather than a loan. For homeowners, co-ownership isn't just a financial choice, it's a spiritual one. They're often deeply relieved to find a halal option that aligns with their values, says Abir Ali, co-founder and CEO of NIA, an Islamic financial institution. In this model, really, halal or lawful, is this model really halal or lawful, though? Personal practices and opinions within Islamic communities vary. Some sites, like Sulaiman, feel that there is not one straight answer to how Islamic banking should function. This lack of black and white guidelines within the Islamic community makes him and others feel conflicted about their options, regardless of which institution they finance with. Debate among scholars. There are several chapters in the Quran that refer to riba, including one that states Allah has permitted trade and forbidden riba. Riba is actually very strictly prohibited in the Quran, says Abderrahman Kusi, president of the North American Foundation of Islamic Studies in North Carolina. The Quran has been very clear from day one about riba, and Muslims should stay away from it and do not get involved in any kind of transaction that involves interest. That's an answer from the Quran. But Kusi notes there's debate among all Islamic scholars when it comes to modern issues. There's a lot of gray area. For example, he said, scholars take different positions on certain matters like necessity, or what would be considered important and necessary enough to pay interest when buying a home or a car. However, when Muslims ask him for advice on riba, Kusa tells it, if you can stay away from it, that's the best thing you can do. Seeking other ways to finance. Many Muslims resort to participating in alternative financing methods. Sulaiman remembers from his time growing up in Saudi Arabia that families would buy properties fully in cash, lending each other money without interest and selling land to get the extra money instead of a loan in order to avoid riba. Tasnim Chowdhury, an ethnically Bangladeshi Muslim, who is a dental assistant in Northern Virginia, highlighted the same practice with their community in the United States. I've borrowed money from friends and family. I've never been charged when borrowing from them. I've also lent money to friends and family. I've never charged them interest. I would only lend what was within my means. However, this option may not be realistic for all, especially those who do not have stable financial situations or like the financial support they had in their home country. Even in the Middle East, many Sharia-compliant Muslims struggle to find truly halal financial options due to Islamic financing institutions labeling themselves as riba-free while they still participate in haram or forbidden financing practices. In the U.S., Chowdhury and other Muslims in her life have found it hard to avoid riba altogether, so they participate in both halal financing when possible and conventional banking otherwise, she said. Paying interest is just something we know we have to do. We don't really have any choice of going around it, she said. Buying a car without a loan is a little bit more manageable, whereas a house is not necessarily as manageable, so you have to kind of pay interest. Additionally, some Muslims have engaged in haram banking practices due to being unaware of the option of Islamic finance institutions when they needed money. We would say there are enough Muslims who want to stay away from riba, but most of them find it hard to be 100% riba-free. Mostly people realize a little bit late how serious the issue is, and by that time, they've accumulated some loans that involve riba and make it hard for them to get out of it. Transparency is the key to building trust with the Muslim community. Ali from NIA acknowledges that not all Islamic financing options offer true alternatives. We saw that many so-called Islamic mortgage alternatives were just rebranded conventional loans, more focusing on fitting into existing frameworks and staying true to Islamic values. NIA's practice, he argued, is not a workaround for mortgages, but a fundamentally different model designed from the ground up to be halal. NIA charges no interest and shares in the cost of owning a home. Homeowners can gain principal through flexible payments, the company said. Aside from debates over whether such institutions offer truly halal financing, there is the issue of access. Not many of these institutions exist, and those that do, in areas with greater Muslim populations, such as California, New York, and New Jersey, face challenges in publicizing what is unique about their offerings. While institutions may provide a clear explanation of their riba-free financial model, some individuals remain skeptical of their intentions. Choosing whether or not to finance with an Islamic institution all depends on the term and how the model is being presented. I'm not saying they're bad or intentional, but at the end of the day, everyone wants to make a buck.
And you're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on our Niagara Frontier radio reading service. Our time is 12:42. We're still in our money section. Now I have the USPS pauses its pension payments to offset a crisis. Suspension will free up about $2.5 billion. The U.S. Postal Service has temporarily suspended payments to workers' retirement plans, citing that the agency's ongoing financial woes. The Postal Service told the Office of Personnel Management of the Postal Service Board of Governors had opted to temporarily suspend its contributions to the Federal Employees Retirement System to conserve cash and preserve liquidity due to its ongoing severe financial crisis, the agency said in its news release. USPS usually pays about $200 million every other week to OPM for its employers' contributions to the Federal Employees Retirement System annuity, the agency said. Now, the suspension of those payments, effective Friday, April 10th, will free up about $2.5 billion. Employee contributions to the retirement system, though, they will continue, and USPS will continue to pay employer automatic and matching contributions and employee contributions to the Thrift Savings Plan. Other payments, like Social Security, those will also continue. Postal Service Chief Financial Officer Luke Grossman assured current and future retirees would not face any immediately detrimental impact from this action. The risk to the Postal Service and the American public from insufficient liquidity for postal operations dramatically outweighs any longer-term risk to the pension funds from not making the currently due payments, he said. The action, it's not a permanent solution to the USPS's financial woes, the agency said. Legislative action is desperately needed to return the Postal Service to profitability, they said. Recently appointed Postmaster General David Steiner, he said he expects the USPS to run out of cash by the year 2027 without any of Congress's help. Now that includes raising the agency's statutory debt limit from $15 billion to $34.5 billion. The move to temporarily suspend payments, it came after Postal Regulatory Commission on Thursday gave the USPS a multi-year waiver to take actions that would provide breathing room amid its deteriorating financial condition. The USPS has reported net losses of $118 billion since 2007, as first-class mail, its most profitable product, has fallen to its lowest volume since the late 1960s. In February, USPS reported a quarterly loss of $1.25 billion. USPS to raise prices on priority mail to help address its cost. Now, USPS won approval from the Postal Regulatory Commission for a temporary 8% price hike for priority mail and package deliveries. Now, that'll be effective April 26th to deal with rising transportation and fuel costs. USPS plans for the surcharge to be in effect through January 17th of 2027. Now, Steiner told Congress in March that hiking first-class mail stamp prices, perhaps up to $1 or more, up from its current 78 cents. Now, that would also provide added revenue and help it cut its losses.
And here's the Ask Johnny column. This is by Johnny C. Taylor, who tackles your workplace questions each week for USA Today. He's president and CEO of SHRM, the world's largest trade association of human resources professionals, and the author of Reset, A Leader's Guide to Work in the Age of Upheaval. This column today, is it okay to disagree with senior management? Question. I enjoy my job and the people I work with, but I find myself increasingly disagreeing with some decisions made by senior leadership. How much disagreement with leadership is normal? And at what point does misalignment become a sign that it's time for me to move on? Asked Brandon. The answer, disagreeing with senior leadership is normal, and in healthy organizations it's expected. What matters isn't whether you disagree, but what you're disagreeing about and how those disagreements are handled. And let's start with a reality check. If you never disagree with leadership, one of the two things is likely true. You're not really invested in the work, or the culture doesn't invite honest discussion. Neither is good. Thoughtful dissent is often a sign of engagement, not disloyalty. That said, perspective matters. Senior leaders make decisions by weighing information, constraints, and risks that aren't always visible to employees. Strategy involves trade-offs, and not every call will feel right from where you sit. That's where trust comes in. Even when you disagree, you should believe leadership is acting in good faith and in service of the organization's long-term direction. A useful way to assess misalignment is to distinguish between strategy and values. Disagreements about priorities, timelines, or execution are part of a working life. You won't always agree on what to do first, how fast to move, or which option is best. Those debates can be productive and often make decisions stronger. Disagreements about values are different. If leadership's decisions consistently conflict with your core beliefs about integrity, fairness, or the organization's mission, that's not just friction, that's a signal. Over time, values misalignment erodes trust, credibility, and motivation, and no amount of liking your coworkers will fix that. Strong organizations like SHRM follow a simple discipline. Challenge, decide, commit. Employees are encouraged to raise concerns and offer alternative perspectives. Leaders make the call. Then the organization moves forward together. That model only works when dissent is welcomed before decisions are made, and commitment is expected afterwards. So pay attention to how leadership responds when you speak up. Are questions invited or tolerated? Is disagreement met with curiosity or defensiveness? Do leaders explain decisions, even when they don't change course? A culture that consistently shuts down feedback isn't protecting alignment. It's undermining engagement and avoiding accountability. Ask yourself a few direct questions. Do you still believe in what the organization is trying to achieve? Do you trust leadership's intent, even when you don't like the outcome? Do you feel comfortable raising a different viewpoint without consequences? If the answers are yes, some level of disagreement isn't a problem. It's part of doing meaningful work. But if you no longer trust leadership, if their decisions regularly clash with your values, or if dissent is treated as a threat rather than a valued input, the tension won't resolve itself. Over time, staying will require you to disengage or compromise in ways that aren't sustainable. The bottom line, disagreement is healthy. Misalignment that is rooted in a lack of trust or conflicting values is not. Knowing the difference helps you decide whether the right move is to lean in, speak up, or start preparing for what's next.
And over 1 million Bissell cleaners are recalled after causing burn injuries. Millions of Bissell cleaning machines sold to popular retailers like Target, Walmart, and Amazon have been recalled after they caused more than 100 reported burn injuries. Now, according to an April 9th warning from the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission, 1.7 million Bissell-branded steam cleaners have accessories that could detach from the main machine, and then it allows hot water or steam to escape. Bissell has received 206 reports of the cleaners' attachments unexpectedly disconnecting from the machines as of April 9th. Now, that has resulted in 161 burn injuries and at least one secondary burn. The steam cleaners and affected attachments, they were sold in stores at Target, Walmart, and other retailers, as well as online at Amazon.com, HSN.com, and other websites. It was from October of 24 to March of 26, and it was from $9 to $55. Here's what you need to know about these recalled products. Which Bissell cleaners have been recalled? The first one is the Bissell Steam Shot Omni Reach steam cleaner with attachments. Next is the Bissell Omni handheld steam cleaner with attachments. The attachments sold with these cleaners are the parts that pose the safety risk, according to the CPSC. Depending on the model, this may include an accessory nozzle, a grout brush, a round detail brush, a flat scraping tool, an angle concentrator tool, extension hose, fabric steamer, and or steam squeegee. Now, the affected units were sold in colors. They were green, gray, white, blue, and dark blue. And here are the following model numbers, which can be found on the bottom of the products. They are 4155, 4155L, 4155W, 4155G, 4155D like dog, 4155J, 4155Y, 4155P, 4171, 4171L, 4171W, and 4171F. So what do you do if you have a recalled Bissell steamer? Consumers who own a recalled Bissell steamer, they should stop using the accompanying attachments immediately and then contact the company to receive free replacements. Affected customers should visit Bissell's recall webpage, that's www.steamshot2026.com, and then they register their product and then they submit a replacement application. Consumers have been asked to upload photos showing the affected accessories disposed of in the trash to complete the process. And let's see if Alan has something else.
Yeah, we have something from the front page. Texas is sued over the school voucher program. The lawsuits allege bias versus Islamic institutions. Efforts by state officials in Texas and Florida are raising questions and triggering lawsuits over whether their taxpayer-funded school voucher programs discriminated against Islamic schools in violation of the First Amendment. Both Texas Governor Greg Abbott and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis have designated the Council on American Islamic Relations, a Muslim civil rights group, as a foreign terrorist organization. The CAIR has long rejected such characterizations and is not on the federal government's list of designated foreign terrorist organizations. Nevertheless, Abbott's administration has used the designation to justify excluding, at least temporarily, certain Islamic private schools from its voucher program based on their alleged affiliation with CAIR. DeSantis signed legislation barring private schools deemed to be affiliated with or influenced by foreign terrorist organizations into law on April 6th. Experts and representatives said the Abbott and DeSantis administrations have the burden of proving their allegations in court. If they can't provide evidence supporting their claims that certain Islamic schools are tied to terrorism, they said the efforts could amount to illegal religious discrimination. Edward Ahmed Mitchell, the National Deputy Director of CIR, condemned what he described as Abbott and DeSantis' political stunts. There's no Texas exception of the First Amendment, he said. The debate over school vouchers and religious freedom comes at a time when states, particularly in the conservative South and Midwest, are pushing for more open display of religion in government and public life. From the posting of the Ten Commandments in public schools to efforts to establish the nation's first religious charter school. Charter schools are similar to public schools in that they are publicly funded and tuition free, but they are independently operated under agreements with the government. By contrast, voucher programs like those in Texas and Florida help families pay tuition at private schools, many of which have religious ties. Travis Pillow, a program spokesman for the Texas Education Freedom Accounts, said the state controller office has to investigate whether the applicant schools are arms of terrorist organization. This is not a religious question, it's a question of whether the applicant is violating relevant law. He went on to say that vetting process does not involve religion, though he did not provide further details on what it does entail, and that the office does not have information on how Islamic schools have been admitted to the program. Abbott declared both the Muslim Brotherhood and CIR as foreign terrorists in late 2025, and the designation authorizes heightened enforcement against both organizations and their affiliates and prohibits them from purchasing or acquiring land in Texas. DeSantis signed an executive order along similar lines in December, directing state agencies to prevent unlawful activities by these organizations. The CIR Foundation and their Florida chapter sued DeSantis days later. U.S. District Judge Mark Walker in March blocked DeSantis' order from being implemented while litigation continues, writing that the First Amendment bars the governor from continuing the trend of using an executive office to make a political statement at the expense of others' constitutional rights. President Donald Trump's administration designated 3 specific branches of the American Muslim Brotherhood as terrorist organizations in January. Although similar declarations have been made in Saudi Arabia and Egypt, the United Nations and European Union have not added the sprawling group to their terrorist lists. It's a classic First Amendment case. The father of 2 children who attended an accredited K-12 Islamic school near Houston sued Paxton, Hancock, and Morath on their First Amendment grounds on March 1st.
And you're listening to a reading of articles from our USA Today for Tuesday, April the 14th of 2026 on our Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return to you for more readings just after this short break. And your readers again today are Jody
and Alan Blackburn.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we'll continue with our USA Today, and we have additional programming after that. Stay with us for those readings and even more throughout the day. We're having a small technical glitch. That is why I'm speaking. We will be back up in just a minute. As I'm waiting for the computer to open the software back up. We for those unaware, we have a radio reading service app. That app is available through the Google and Apple app stores. Google Play Store is the term for if you have a Google a device running Google. That is the Android operating system. Other things to mention as I'm just vamping here. In just a second, I should have hopefully be able to play some. There we go.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's issue of USA Today. Your readers are
Jody.
and Alan Blackburn. It's on to the sports section in golf. Twists, turns, repeat. Rory McIlroy takes the scenic route to a historic Masters win. This is a column by Christine Brennan. It is a rare Master champion who, with just one hole to play, only a few minutes from victory, is wondering where in the world his tee shot has landed. Walking off the 18th tee, not knowing where my ball was, I think that was the moment of greatest stress. It could go anywhere. It could be anywhere. With those words, Rory McIlroy appropriately described the twists and turns of his unique path to glory, one that saw a historic 6-shot lead at the halfway point of the Masters evaporate into a 3-shot deficit in its final round before McIlroy regained some semblance of control with nearly a half-dozen worthy competitors giving chase. So there McIlroy stood on the 18th tee with a rather comfortable 2-stroke lead, watching his tee shot fly so far where it was supposed to go that it ended closer to the wrong fairway, the 10th fairway, and the one that he was aiming for was for the 18th fairway. "I don't make it easy," he said later, and that's when he wondered if it might be in a really bad spot or behind a tree. "I was just hoping that I had a swing." It turned out that he did. In fact, it was fitting that McIlroy's grand plan to cinch his second consecutive Masters title was something that could have been hatched in a sports movie. He launched a towering 8-iron over not only a menacing tree, but even the scoreboard on the 18th green, landing it, well, no one was exactly sure where. The TV camera people were fooled. Where was it? It turned out the ball was nestled in a bunker guarding the front left of the green. Not the best place to be, but also not the worst. McIlroy wasted no time and blasted out to 15 feet from the hole, and then putted to within a few inches, and then smiled. It was over, and he knew it. He knew he'd make that tiny putt for a bogey and a one-shot win and become the first repeat Masters champion since Tiger Woods in 2002, and only the 4th in history. So moments later, when the ball fell into the hole, McIlroy, who's 36 years old, tossed his head back and yelled and shed a tear or two. He hugged his caddy, and eventually his daughter and his wife, who's actually from Western New York, and his parents, who had come in from Northern Ireland after missing his victory last year. There's rarely a press conference or interview that goes by that McIlroy doesn't mention his mom and dad, thanking him for the opportunities they gave him an only child. I caught myself on the golf course a couple of times thinking about them, McIlroy said. It was like, no, not yet, not yet. It's really cool to have them here. They missed it last year. And the first thing I wanted to do was fly home to see them because obviously I wouldn't be sitting up here if it wasn't for them. One might think that the Master Champion's parents would have no qualms about coming to the tournament the next year to see their son defend his title, not the McIlroys. I had to sort of convince them to come this year because they thought the reason I won last year was because they weren't here, McIlroy said. I'm glad we proved that wrong so they can keep coming as long as they want. In both of his Masters triumphs, McIlroy has run the gamut of emotion, taking the lead, losing it, regaining it, hanging on for dear life. And this is who McIlroy is, and this is how he plays. He is typically honest about it. Having a 6-shot lead going into the weekend, it would have been a bitter pill to swallow if I wasn't able to get myself over the finish line, he said. It wasn't easy, but he did it, revealing another McIlroy strength, instant perspective, especially his ability to marvel at the moment. I can't believe I've waited 17 years to get one green jacket, he said, and now I get 2 in a row.
And 5 figures who helped turn the Suns in 26. When the 2025-26 NBA season began, the Phoenix Suns were largely an afterthought. After missing the postseason last year and then revamping their roster, the Suns were seen as a rebuilding project that would likely miss the postseason again. But Phoenix, who's 45-37, became one of the league's surprises, finishing 7th in the Western Conference. If the Suns win then, the next, they will advance to the playoffs as the number 7 seed and face the San Antonio Spurs in the first playoff round. So here's a breakdown of the 5 individuals who were key to the Suns' turnaround this season. First one is Brian Gregory. He was a longtime college coach. Gregory entered the NBA as the Suns' vice president of player programming for 1 year before he replaced James Jones as general manager in May of 25 in one of Ishbia's biggest decisions. After he took over, the Suns made their 2 most significant player moves. The first, they traded Kevin Durant to Houston for Dillon Brooks, Jalen Green, and the number 10 overall 25 draft pick, Duke 7-foot big Kamen Maluk. The other was buying out Bradley Beal's contract, which gave the Suns greater flexibility to build the roster. Then they have Jordan Ott. Ott was hired in June of 25 as head coach. He was the Cleveland Cavs assistant coach who helped lead them to the East best record during 24-25 season. Ott's philosophy of winning the possession game, hoisting more trays, forcing turnovers, and out-hustling opponents on the offensive glass was evident all season. Then they have Dylan Brooks. When the Suns made the Durant trade, Green was seen as a key part of the deal that would bring scoring to the team to help complement Devin Booker. However, Green was hampered by a hamstring injury and missed most of the season's first half. Brooks, however, immediately had an impact, bringing a tough physical approach to the game that seemed to elevate the entire team while showing that he could score. Then they have Colin Gillespie. Gillespie signed a two-way deal with the Suns in 24. He began showing flashes late last season after he was elevated to Phoenix from the Valley Suns G League team. He's averaged a career-high 12.7 points, 4.6 assists, 4.1 rebounds, 1.2 steals, 28.5 minutes, 80 appearances, and 58 starts this season. He signed a guaranteed one-year contract in June of 25 and has turned heads as one of their top three-point shooters and best clutch players. Then the last one they have is Mark Williams. Williams was acquired by Charlotte in exchange for Vasilije Micic, the number 2025 number 29 overall pick and a 2029 first-round pick. This seven-footer's inconsistent health, it has been problematic for most of his four-year career. He did total 106 appearances during his previous 3 seasons, but the Suns had him on a preseason conditioning plan that seemed to pay off, as he's now played 60 games this season, starting 55. He missed 15 consecutive games due to a left foot third metatarsal stress reaction late in the season, but he has since returned. Williams is a lob threat, leading rebounder and inside defender. He's averaging nearly a double-double at 11.7 points and 64.4% shooting, 8.0 boards, 0.9 blocks, 0.9 steals, and has shown flashes of dominance in the paint. Williams' season high was 27 points on 81.3% shooting during a 106-102 home win over Brooklyn. He averaged 13 points on a nearly 80.8% FG, 6.3 rebounds, and 1.3 blocks in the last 4 games.
Formula crowns the surprise number 1 pick of all time. On April 13th, yesterday, the WNBA was scheduled to hold its 30th annual draft, where the biggest stars from the college ranks and overseas leagues would be selected. In 1997, Tina Thompson was the first WNBA draft pick, and the one that worked out quite well for the Houston Comets as she helped them win 4 championships. More recently, 3 consecutive first-round picks by the Las Vegas Aces, Kelsey Plum, Aja Wilson, and Jackie Young, helped the franchise capture multiple league titles also. In the mix to hear their name called first on April 13th was UCLA center Lauren Betts, TCU point guard Olivia Miles, UConn sharpshooter Ozzie Fudd, and 19-year-old Awa Fam from Spain. With 29 drafts in the books for the WNBA, it's time to reflect on some league history and answer the question, who is the greatest number 1 pick of all time? To answer that, we came up with a formula that put the point valuations on accomplishments and the player achieved with the team that drafted them. League MVP awards and championships weighed the heaviest, followed by finals appearance in all WNBA selections. Other awards leading the league in the stat, like scoring or blocks, and all-star selections are also weighed. It's really too early to evaluate the 4 recent picks: Ryan Howard of Atlanta in 2022, Aaliyah Boston of Indiana 2023, and Caitlin Clark of Indiana in 2024, and Paige Buckers of Dallas in 2025. But here we go. Number 1 top pick, Aja Wilson of the Las Vegas Aces in 2018. She's still under the age of 30. Wilson has already won the league MVP award 4 times, more than anyone else in the history of the WNBA. For the former South Carolina Gamecock, has powered the Las Vegas Aces to 3 championships and is a 7-time All-Star, 6-time All-WNBA selection, and 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. If she doesn't already, she'll have a real case for the greatest player in the history of WNBA by the time she retires. Number 2, Diana Taurasi of the Phoenix Mercury in 2004. The WNBA's all-time scoring leader spent her entire career with the Mercury and won 3 championships. one of the best women's basketball player ever. Taurasi was an all-WNBA selection 14 times and led the league in scoring 5 times. She's also the WNBA's all-time leader in three-pointers and free throws made, and probably the league's greatest trash talker. Number 3, Sue Bird of the Seattle Storm. Bird has her own statue in Seattle. She spent her entire career there, bringing the Storm 4 championships and helping them make the playoffs 18 times. The Yukon product is the WNBA's all-time leader in assists, games and played, and minutes played. She was a 13-time All-Star, and 8-time All-WNBA selection. Number 4, Candace Parker of the Los Angeles Sparks, drafted in 2008. Before winning titles in the latter stages of her career with the Chicago Sky and Las Vegas Aces, Parker was a star with the Sparks, piling up 9 All-WNBA selections and 12 playoff appearances. She powered LA to the 2016 title with the Finals MVP. Parker was also twice won the league MVP award with Sparks, including her rookie season in 2008. Number 5, Simone Augustus of the Minnesota Lynx, drafted in 2006. The former LSU star won 4 WNBA championships with the Lynx and helped them appear in the finals 6 times. She was an 8-time All-Star and 8 MVP of the 2011 finals and ranks 10th all-time in field goals made. Number 6, Lauren Jackson of the Seattle Storm in 2001. The 6'6" Australian center won 3 MVP awards and led the Storm to a pair of championships in 8 seasons. Her 2007 performance is one of the best seasons by a player in WNBA history, as she was Defensive Player of the Year and led the league in scoring and rebounding. Number 7, Maya Moore of the Minnesota Lynx of 2011. Moore's career was brief, but she helped the Lynx win 4 championships in 8 seasons. She was the league MVP in 2014 and made the All-WNBA team in all but one of her seasons. Moore was the Finals MVP in 2013, was named MVP of the All-Star Game 3 times. Number 8, Tina Thomas of the Houston Comets in 1997. The number 1 overall pick of the first draft, Thompson was a key part of the Comets as they won 4 consecutive championships. She was an 8-time All-WNBA selection in Houston. Number 9, Brittany Griner of the Phoenix Mercury, drafted in 2013. Griner twice led the NBA in scoring with the Mercury and topped the league's blocks leaderboard 8 times, a 10-time All-Star and 7-time All-Defense selection. She helped Phoenix win a championship in 2014. Number 10, Breanna Stewart of the Seattle Storm in 2016. Before joining the New York Liberty, Stewart helped Seattle win 2 championships and was MVP of the finals in 2018 and 2020. She won her first league MVP award in 2018 and was All-WNBA selection 5 times. Number 11, Angel McCourtry of the Atlantic Dream in 2009. The Louisville product's career in Atlanta feels underrated. She guided the Dream to 3 appearances in WNBA finals, twice led the league in scoring and steals, and was an all-time defense selection. McCourtry also made 5 All-Star teams and 6 All-WNBA teams. Number 12, Nneka Ogwumike of the Los Angeles Sparks in 2012. In 2016, she was an MVP All-Star, first-time All-NBA, WNBA, and first-team All-Defense, and helped the Sparks win the championship. She helped the Los Angeles make 9 trips to the playoffs in 12 seasons. Number 13, Jewel Lloyd of the Seattle Storm in 2015. The 2015 Rookie of the Year and 2023 Scoring Championships Lloyd helped Seattle win 2 championships before joining the Las Vegas Aces the last season. She's also a 6-time All-Star and 3-time All-WNBA selection while with the Storm. Number 4, Jackie Young of the Las Vegas Aces 2019. A 4-time All-Star, a 2-time All-WNBA selection, and 2019 Rookie of the Year. Young has helped the Aces win 3 championships in her career. Number 15, Shameik Holdsclaw of the Washington Mystics in 1999. The 1999 Rookie of the Year, Holdsclaw made 5 All-Star teams with the Mystics and was an All-WNBA selection 3 times, where she was traded to the Sparks in 2005. The Tennessee product and the 2-time Olympic gold medalist also won the scoring title in 2002 and twice led the WNBA in rebounding while in Washington. Number 16, Sabrina Ionescu of the New York Liberty in 2020. The Oregon product is likely going to move up quickly this year in the list as years go on, Says you'll earn 4 All-WNBA selections and 4 All-Star nods and help the Liberty win the championship in 2024.
And you're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on our Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Our time is 1:15. We're still in sports. We're going to talk about the Masters again. Masters King is no longer a choke artist. He's a golf legend now. He goes from being a Masters winner to Masters royalty. That's what this championship means. He's not a Masters choke artist anymore. That's so passé. Rory McIlroy rules Augusta National, and he'll keep the crown, thank you. Rory Repeat, Rory Reigns, Rory Renaissance. And across the course, you could hear the Rory roars from the gallery once he got cooking just before the turn. Absolutely delighted to be able to get it done, he said. On April 12th, after winning with a score of 12 under, it was one ahead of Scottie Scheffler. Wins it in the Amen corner. McIlroy once went more than a decade between major championships. Now he's got 2 in 12 months, and his game looks sharp. His nerves are steelier. 2 rounds into the tournament, it looked like McIlroy might run away with this. Nobody was better in round 1. Nobody was better in round 2, but plenty were better in round 3. McIlroy put in the legwork the first 2 days to establish a 6-stroke lead. His moving day wobble meant he'd need to be good on April 12th, and he wasn't great on that final day. He was good enough. This place feels like my home course, he said. That he'd wind up having to fight to defend the turf makes the repeat all the more impressive. Cameron Young, Russell Henley, Justin Rose, and Scheffler came for the North Irishman's Richmond Country throne. They didn't have enough juice in part because McIlroy put red ink on the card in the Amen corner after a roller coaster front 9. With the Masters hanging on the high wire, the defending champ stuffed a 9-iron to 7 feet on the number 12, the putt pure birdie. His birdie putt on the 13 swirled the back of the cup and then dropped, and all the Roars fans just said, Amen. On number 18, McIlroy needed a bogey 5 to win it. He tapped in at 5, threw back his head and celebrated as champions do, and the crowd that loves him just said, Rory, Rory, Rory. His triumph last year changed his status at Augusta National, and he got a green jacket and a parking spot in the Mercedes-filled champ lot next to the clubhouse. He got a stall inside the champions' locker room and a seat at the annual champions' dinner. Repeat, it makes him a legend. Dozens of players have won a Masters championship, of course, but fewer than 20 have won it twice. McIlroy is now one of them. Tradition here says the previous Master winner slips the green jacket on the new winner. But traditions sometimes require a backup because McIlroy made sure there was no new winner. He joins Jack Nicklaus, Nick Faldo, and Tiger Woods as back-to-back Masters champs. That's the who's who of golf. McIlroy has a spot in that who's who's. With a hat tip to Faldo, you were brilliant, sir. McIlroy probably deserves a claim as the best golfer in Europe's history. He's even with Faldo's 6 majors. He's tied with Phil Mickelson and Lee Trevino, too. Nicklaus was 46 years old when he got his final Masters. Tiger, he was 43. So that's to say, no reason to think McIlroy's done winning. He referred to himself as a wily old veteran last week, and when you consider this was his 18th career start on this plot of land, well, it's true. But at 36 years old, he's still in his prime. He could do it again. That's what you must realize. Perhaps he can do it again here, more than once. Put a bee in your bonnet 12 months out. Nobody's won the Masters 3 years in a row. Before this tournament, McIlroy said that of the 4 majors, he thought he was best suited to win the Masters again at some point. Who knew he meant this year? Nobody can dispute McIlroy is a master of the Masters and forever a legend of golf.
Fudd has the stuff of ideal WNBA number 1 in this column written a couple days ago, ahead of the draft. Ahead of the Final Four and with the WNBA draft looming yesterday, ESPN's Andrea Carter had a simple response to a question about one of the biggest stars in the women's NCAA tournament. Could UConn's Azzi Fudd be picked number 1 overall by the Dallas Wings? Yeah, of course, Carter told USA Today Sports. Why not? Pressed further, Carter explained Fudd's value. She's a specialist when it comes to being a shooter. The ability to hit shots, the ability to space the floor, Carter said. There's so many things that when you have a floor spacer, just that the skill alone is an amazing opportunity to have success at the WNBA level. Even on nights she's not hitting 3-pointers, she can attack those long closeouts, which puts the defense in scramble mode. When the defense is in scramble mode, somebody's going to be open. In this year's draft, scheduled yesterday in New York, there was a clear separation between the top 4 prospects and everyone else. There was 6'7" UCLA center Lauren Betts, who just powered the Bruins to the national championship. There's TCU point guard Olivia Miles, a wizard with the ball in her hands who can dish out neck-breaking assists and then swish open shots from deep range. There's also Awa Pham, a 19-year-old 6'6" center from Spain, who's a bit of unpolished but brings sky-high potential. And then there's Fudd, a product of UConn, the most successful program in college women's basketball. Should they take her with the top pick, she would be the 7th player coached by 12-time champion Gino Auriemma to go number 1 overall. I look at Dallas, and I wonder, are they going to focus more on positional need for the future? Because when it comes to post players, it's been a little inconsistent, right? So that's the only cause for pause that I have, said ESPN's Chini Ogwumike, the 2014 number 1 pick. Are they going to take the best shooter or for sure player? Or are they going to look a little bit more positionally? It's tough. I see Azzy's skill set, and she is a sure bet. And one thing that translates is shooting. Like any draft prospect, there are arguments for and against Fudd having success in the WNBA. The positives start with their offensive abilities. Fudd nearly had a 50-40-90 season for the Huskies, shooting 48% from the floor, 44% from the three-point land, and 95% from the free throw line. In a more prominent scoring role this year for UConn, she averaged 17 points and 3 assists per game. Since 2009, which is as far back as the database for women's basketball analytics and statistics website Her Hoop Stats goes, Fudd is one of 4 players to average at least 17 points, 3 assists, and 65 three-point attempts per game, while shooting better than 44% from behind the arc. The others were Army's Kelsey Minato in 2015-16, and Giannato Neepin's last season at Utah, and Oklahoma's Taylor Robertson in the 21-22 campaign. She's underrated as a defender, too. This season ranked 3rd in defensive win shares at 2.8 and was 15th nationally in defensive rating. Fudd was an All-American this season and is 2-time All-Big East selection. Last year, she was named the most outstanding player in the Final Four after scoring a combined 43 points in wins over UCLA, and South Carolina en route to UConn's first national titles in 2016. That's who I would take number 1 if I was general manager, ESPN's Rebecca Lobo told USA Today Sports. She's going to fit in seamlessly, and the latest word is she was indeed taken number 1 yesterday.
The Mexican president says FIFA rejects Iran request. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum revealed that FIFA has rejected Iran's request to move its World Cup men's soccer matches from the United States to Mexico. Amid an ongoing war with the U.S., Iran's participation in the 2026 World Cup, it's still up in the air with 2 months remaining until the tournament kicks off. Iran has qualified for the World Cup and is scheduled to play New Zealand in L.A. on June 15th, Belgium in L.A. on June 21st, and Egypt in Seattle on June 26th. But Iran had been looking to avoid traveling to the U.S., where President Donald Trump warned last month that the Iranian team might not be safe. We will boycott the U.S., but not the World Cup, Iranian Football Federation President Mehdi Taj said last month. However, Sheinbaum said at a press conference on April 10th that FIFA officials did not allow for Mexico's request to proceed. FIFA ultimately decided that their matches cannot be moved from their original venues, Sheinbaum said, adding that FIFA believed that the request would require an enormous logistical effort. The rejection puts the onus on Iran to decide on its next move. The country has hinted at withdrawing from the World Cup, but at this point it has not done that officially. So why did FIFA reject Iran's request to move the games to Mexico? As Sheinbaum has mentioned, changing the venue of a World Cup game, especially to a different country, this close to the tournament, well, it's a logistical headache. Iran, as well as other 3 teams in Group G, have already booked a location for their base camp throughout the tournament, which is based on where they're playing their games. And then in addition, Fans, media members, and others have booked flights, hotels, cars, and other necessities. Should Iran advance from the group play stage, its round of 32 games would also very likely be scheduled for the U.S. Avoiding the U.S. would require a venue change then, just days in advance. The U.S. is also scheduled to host every match of the tournament from the quarterfinals on.
The Pirates Astros mourn a player skipper Garner. Phil Garner, the three-time All-Star second baseman whose scrap iron persona befitted both his personality as a player and manager, has died after a nearly 3-year battle with pancreatic cancer, his family announced. Garner, who died April 11th, was 76 years old. He played a crucial role in the most recent Pittsburgh Pirates World Series champions, the 1979 We Are a Family crew that won a 7-game fall classic against the Baltimore Orioles, amassing 161 hits and an 800 OPS before getting 17 hits in 36 postseason at-bats. As a manager, he piloted the Houston Astros to their first World Series appearance, a 2005 romp through the playoffs as an 89-win National League wild card before running into the Chicago White Sox, who swept Houston in 4 games. It was easily his high mark as a manager, as he's often saddled with suboptimal talent in his 8 years managing the Milwaukee Brewers and 3 seasons with the Detroit Tigers. The Brewers are saddened to learn of the passing of former manager Phil Garner, the club said in a statement. Following a distinguished playing career, Phil served as our manager from 1992 to 1999 and went on to manage the second most games in franchise history. He was a very highly respected and beloved individual who is known for his caring nature, wisdom, and sense of humor. Our deepest condolences go out to Phil's wife, Carol, and all of his family and friends and fans. Garner had 1,594 hits, never hitting more than 17 home runs, but twice eclipsing the 30 steal mark. His ability to max out his talent led to a 16-year career, debuting with the Oakland Athletics in 1973, established himself as a regular in 1975, and moving on to stops with the Pirates, the Astros, the Los Angeles Dodgers, and the San Francisco Giants, retiring after the 1987 season. His finest hour came with the Pirates, still searching for the magic that produced a title behind the bat and ballast of Willie Stargell, yet moored in the contributions of players like Garner. Pirates owner Bill Nutting called Garner a fierce competitor, a respected leader, and a cherished part of the Pirates family. His contributions to the 1979 World Series championship team will be forever a part of the Pirates' history. He'll be remembered not only for his grit, passion, and heart he brought to the game, but also for the way he carried himself as a devoted family man and respected member of the baseball community. Said Astros owner Jim Crane, Phil Garner's contributions to the Houston Astros, the city of Houston, and to the game of baseball will not be forgotten. And here's a picture of Phil Garner as he throws out the ceremonial first pitch prior to a 2025 game in Houston. He's got a big smile on his face and a mustache and Astros number 3 jersey.
And you're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on our Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Our time is 1:28, and it's time for me to take you to the lifestyle section. We're going to start with a television article. Green rides in on Marshalls after his leg up from Grimes. Here's an exclusive first look at country star Riley Green's acting debut in the CBS's Marshalls, playing Garrett, a troubled former Navy SEAL who happens to be pretty good with his guitar. Green, who's 37, he makes his debut in the Yellowstone spin-off on April the 19th alongside his real-life buddy Luke Grimes, who is making a ratings-dominating return as Casey Dutton. Former SEAL Casey, who fought alongside Garrett in Afghanistan, welcomes his old friend to Montana for 4 episodes. Does Riley Green sing in Marshalls? You bet. Riley sings his song My Way by the campfire with Grimes watching, which appears in the April 26th episode. It's a solo, and then fellow country singer Grimes does not join in. How did Green's Marshall part come about? The idea for the Marshalls role, it came up with Green and Grimes were writing songs together in Nashville. The different round here singer, he mentioned that he wanted to get into acting, just as Marshalls was coming together for Grimes. I thought getting Green on the Marshalls, it was a super good idea, and he was really excited about it, says Grimes. Lead actor Grimes showed up in the Park City, Utah, when acting newbie Green read for the part in front of the show producers. I guess that doesn't happen all the time, where the star of the show sits in with somebody trying out for the part. But man, I've got to be such good friends with Luke, and it makes it so much easier to step into the world that I wasn't necessarily comfortable in. And it was also important to determine the pair's screen chemistry, which is apparent. We do a lot of scenes together, Green says. Grimes says Green is in 4 episodes, and he absolutely crushes it. The Marshall star helped Green out on television, and Green then repaid the favor and was there for his friend to collaborate on Grimes' album called Redbird. Luke is going to have a career in country music. It's exciting that I can help him out in some small way, Green says. He's obviously helped me out quite a bit in my acting career. So how do you watch Green's Marshalls episodes? The very first of the 4 Marshalls episodes with Green, they air on April the 19th on CBS at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and then they stream on Paramount+.
Lois still wields a mean pair of clippers for Hal. Bryan Cranston and Jane Kaczmarek knew they had hairy times ahead in Hulu's Malcolm in the Middle revival titled Life's Still Not Fair. Loving TV wife Lois, played by Kaczmarek, was set to open the new series by removing all over body hair from Hal, played by Cranston, with the electric clippers, a callback to the infamous back shaving scene from the first Malcolm episode in the year 2000. Still, both 70-year-old stars, with Cranston wearing little more than a smile, happily came to play in the TMI TV family's rebuilt living room. And here's a picture of them, with Cranston holding up a towel in front of his lower parts, and Jane Kaczmarek has her hand on her shoulder, in playing in Life's Still Unfair. Well, with the middle child, Malcolm, Frankie Moon speaking to the camera over breakfast, while avoiding the unfortunate view of his parents, American viewers immediately understood his plight. They couldn't turn away for 7 seasons before the Emmy-winning series ended in 2006. The story behind the scene is similarly funny. Cranston, Kaczmarek, and series creator Linwood Boomer, who starred as Adam Kendall in the original Little House on the Prairie, still laugh about covering the new hire Cranston in yak hair with spirit gum, a 3-hour process. When it came time to shave, they couldn't cut it through the glue, Cranston said. I'm not particularly hirsute. They had to find a substitute. Producers pulled the TV crew on the spot to find a hairy member willing to show off for the camera, setting the stage for the rarely used backside body hair double. They went to the Teamsters and asked if anybody wanted to make $100. Take off your shirts and turn around, says Kaczmarek. They picked the hairy back they wanted. The other moments with the Kaczmarek fake shaving Cranston required a bounteous amount of yak hair taped to her game co-star's posterior. So I could take fluffs of yak hair and throw it just as if I'd shaved it off, Kaczmarek says, laughing. So there was gaffer's tape on his rear end for me to throw. It's a very glamorous life, Cranston says. The back shaving scene is a metaphor for the passage of time. The scene works in Life's Still Unfair on many levels, including illustrating time's relentless march forward. We get a glimpse of the shaving from the original series, dark hair, which then transitions to Hal's gray-haired back 26 years later. Boomer learned his lesson. The stand-in with dyed gray hair on his back was ready to be shaved for the camera. Lois ingeniously provides needed exposition by speaking to grossed-out family members, including newcomer Kelly, the couple's 6th child, played by non-binary actor Vaughn Murray. Cranston was the key to Malcolm in the Middle return. We still see too much of Hal, even if we're spared the full Monty by a well-placed computer. It took many takes and a lot of careful positioning of that computer to make it work, Boomer says. Cranston may not be hirsute, but the Breaking Bad star is a 800-pound gorilla who kicked the world of Malcolm in the Middle back into orbit, continually haranguing Boomer to bring the family together. I miss these people, says Cranston, who started his campaign during his Breaking Bad days. The first time I asked him, it was absolutely not, but I just cut poking. knowing he wouldn't do it unless it was a really tight idea. The concept of a follow-up movie around Lois and Hal's 40th wedding anniversary bash became a 4-episode season. Almost the entire cast returned, with the notable exception of Eric Purcellvan, who declined to return as sibling Dewey. A lookalike Caleb Ellsworth Clark takes the role. Cranston is content with leaving the return to 4 episodes, which culminate in the big party. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end, and that's great. We're very proud of it, Cranston said. We'll leave it at that and see what comes of it.
And now let's talk television. Geist marks a decade of Sunday programs. Willie Geist and his eponymous weekly news program are celebrating a major milestone. It's a decade on the air. Sunday Today with Willie Geist. It debuted on April the 17th of 2016. Then NBC executives gave Geist a blank canvas on which the journalist, also a co-host on Morning Joe, envisioned marrying 2 concepts, kicking the program off with a news discussion and then moving to a format more familiar with today, like a sit-down interview as its centerpiece. It has certainly evolved and changed since then, Geist, who's 50, tells USA Today. The hour-long show includes a brief news overview, a thoughtful, in-depth obituary spotlight called A Life Well Lived, and then a playfully dubbed Mugshots, which highlights viewers posing with yellow Sunday Today cups. The interviews themselves spun off a podcast, Sunday Sit Down with Willie Geist, that was introduced in 2018, and extends his conversations with such noteworthy guests like Jamie Lee Curtis, Viola Davis, Ina Garten, Michael Jordan, and Matthew McConaughey. So here's our question. You and Savannah Guthrie, you're good friends. How have you supported her these past few months? Here's Willie's answer. To watch someone you love and someone you care about that much in so much agony and suffering, it was so very, very painful. And to not be able to do anything to change that for her, we're the kind of people who feel like we're going to fix this. Let's get our heads together. Who are we going to call? What are we going to do? Let's fix this. And then to not be able to do that, it was just helplessness. All we could do was pray and pray and pray and send our love every single day. And now we're overjoyed that she has come back as of April the 6th. To see her in her radiant yellow dress on that Monday morning, it just felt like a blessing that she has come back. Question. Turning back to Sunday Today, who would be your dream guest? Well, sorry to be obvious, but it would be Taylor Swift. Have a good relationship with her and her team. They're never anything but nice and respectful, and they've been great with us, but we just haven't landed that plane yet. I grew up in the late 80s and 90s in New Jersey during the dawn of hip-hop going mainstream, so for me, Jay-Z is kind of like a god. I would love to talk to him. He just did that big interview with GQ, and I was jealous. I was like, that is so good. They got everything. And if he would like to bring his wife with him, Beyonce, of course, that would be great. Or she could come separately. Question. When you think of doing the show for 10 years, what moments stick out? Here's his answer. I always think of my interview with Al Pacino. When I think of the ones that stand out to me, it's the people that you don't see a lot of. So it's a unique conversation. We sat in a red leather booth at an Italian restaurant that he likes in Beverly Hills. Then after the interview, we rented a car that wasn't exactly, but close to the one that Tony Montana drove in Scarface. And the idea that we just get some shots of us driving around. As it was one of those situations where the publicist says, all right, just drive around the block and come back. He's got to go, so I'm driving. Al Pacino's in shotgun, and then 30 minutes later he slips into the accent. All right, take a left up here, Willie. I want to show you something. Brando and I and De Niro, ... And people would pull up next to us and go, oh my gosh, is that Al Pacino? And there's one scene where he looks up and goes, yeah, we're making a movie. It's called Willie and Al. And I'm just like, this is a dream. How did I even get in this car? Last question. You received an Edward R. Murrow Award in 2020 for coverage of the back-to-back shootings in El Paso, Texas, and Dayton, Ohio in 2019. What is it like to cover such tragedies as a journalist? And here's the answer. Just tell the audience what you know. Don't speculate. Do it with humanity. Understand that there are real victims. There are grieving families. There are people praying that their family member will survive the day. On those mornings, you get people calling in who lived through it, and you go, oh my gosh, were you there in the Pulse nightclub? What did you see? And they're going through this incredible trauma that will affect the rest of their lives. So my philosophy is Just be a person. Don't be a news anchor. If you were talking to this person as their friend or stranger who'd come up to them on the street and were trying to hear their story and maybe calm them a little bit, or if it was a family member, what would you do? How would you act and what would you say? How sensitive would you be about certain things? I think bringing facts and humanity in some combination, in some balance, is the key to those terrible mornings like that.
And in the music article, Il Volo to extend his run in North America this fall. The Italian. But first, I want to say that we're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 1:40. Well, the Italian operatic pop trio Il Volo will be figuratively running it back in North America, and for two of the members, literally running back through the States this fall. USA Today can reveal that the group of Piero Baroni, Ignazio Boschetto, and Gianluca Ginobili will extend their world tour with additional North American dates. The 8-city trek kicks off November 10th in Hollywood, Florida, and wraps up November 21st in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Tickets go on sale April 17th at 10 a.m. on the group's website. The announcement comes as Il Volo prepares for its spring trek in the States, which runs April 15th through May 2nd. For Barone, who's 32, and Ginobili, who's 31, that will mean another chance to lace up their running shoes and explore. The singers revealed in a recent Zoom interview that when they visit New York, a Central Park run is a must. The trio will play the Infosys Theater at Madison Square Garden on November 17th. So hopefully they pack their cold weather gear. Barone ran the TCS New York City Marathon in 2023 and calls it the best experience of my life. We are used to emotional feelings on stage, Barone says, noting that it's a privilege to have that experience with their audience. But the feelings of marathon is something I suggest to all my closest friends, because it's something you will never forget in your life. You could call Il Volo's journey a marathon in its own right, although the group's name translates to The Flight. The singers met as teenagers in 2009 while competing on the Italian TV show Ti lascio una canzone, which translates into Leaving You a Song in English. They signed it to Geffen Records shortly after and released their self-titled debut album in 2011. In 2015, the trio represented Italy in the Eurovision Song Contest, placing third but earning the top vote from both the accredited press at the event and the telephone fan vote. Since its inception, the group has toured every continent and racked up hundreds of millions of Spotify streams. As far as the extended North American tour, Boschetto, who's 31, teases that the group loves Christmas. And with the additional dates into the holidays, that will change the set list. Most of our repertoire is inspired by the three tenors, Ginobili adds, referencing the trio of Luciano Pavarotti, Placido Domingo, and Jose Carreras. So that's our goal, especially in the States and all around the world, to keep bringing bel canto, which translates as beautiful singing, to those people who used to listen to it and live the three tenors and Andrea Bocelli, but of course to the new generation.
And now here's a streaming preview for you. Malcolm lets the millennials bask in their own nostalgia. 20 years later, Malcolm is still in the middle. What else can you say about the revival of this beloved sitcom, which ran on Fox from the year 2000 to 2006? Hulu's Malcolm in the Middle, Life's Still Unfair. It reunites Frankie Muniz, Bryan Cranston, and Jane Kaczmarek in a slapstick recreation of this iconic family and their equally iconic antics. There are big box store flash mobs, horses, pratfalls, and of course, lots and lots of screaming. The humor is broad and cozy, like a warm bowl of chicken and dumplings. Muniz's Malcolm talks to the camera, as does Leah, Malcolm's equally gifted and perceptive teen daughter. It's one of the few instances in which the lack of character development, despite 20 years of aging and learning, works. Sitcom tropes don't really work if your dysfunctional characters experience personal growth. But is the reboot any good? It almost doesn't matter. Middle does exactly what it's supposed to do. It pulls on our nostalgic heartstrings and reminds us of our own misspent youth. And when I talk about a we, I'm speaking of us good old millennials for whom family sitcoms were like so informative and comforting. Hollywood is obsessed with bringing back pop culture of the 80s and 90s for years, appealing to the sensibilities of Generation X with the likes of Netflix's Fuller House and even Stranger Things. But now the generation blamed for killing whole industries, everything from napkins to American cheese, is old enough and tired enough to see that our favorites are brought back to life. And as long as those reboots are like middle and don't ruin the memory of the original, it's all hunky-dory. Heck, it's nice to feel seen. Now, the new middle is both wildly different and the same as the original. On the one hand, all the kids have grown up. Even baby Kelly is a rebellious teen. Malcolm is a professionally successful, as one would imagine, running a respected charity. He is a single father to Leah, but he's trying to raise her in every way that he wasn't. His siblings are in various degrees of stagnation, although Francis is married. But Hal and Lois are still in loopy love, and they are still trying to manage one crisis after another. Malcolm still feels ostracized by his family, so much so that he's nearly cut off contact with them. And then nobody seems to be able to keep their emotions in check. Hal and Lois's upcoming 40th wedding anniversary and a big blowout party, that forces Malcolm to reconnect with his family, and not in the way that he intended. They may mostly live apart, but they're all drawn into orbit with each other with very amusing and catastrophic results. Now, the biggest joy of any show like this is those reunions, and the cast, it doesn't disappoint. It's particular giddy joy to see Cranston, who's now most famous and celebrated for his other long-running TV role, intense crime drama called Breaking Bad, exercise his immensely strong funny bone. The actor's face is hilariously expressive. The range of anger and outrage is massive, and his exasperation with his TV sons, well, that knows no bounds. Now, Muniz, who has been further removed from the spotlight in the intervening decades, he slips easily back into the role that made him a child star. He's sardonic and witty, and with a little bit of desperate. Like so many of the 30 and 40-year-old somethings who will be tuning in, he's reckoning with how to parent after he didn't love the way that he was brought up. Now, his daughter, meanwhile, is reckoning with a changing social and technological world that Malcolm never experienced in adolescence. There is an unfortunate amount of soft and woke Gen Z/Gen Alpha stereotypes, which the show would be better off without, though. When the chaos starts in middle, it just never stops. Stay tuned for a big surprise ending in the first episode. And unlike the chaos in our real lives, it's fun and it's silly to enjoy this family falling to pieces. Well, of course, they pick themselves back up again. And there's something so deeply reassuring about that. Nostalgic and cheesy or not. So, is this latest reboot any good? It's good enough for now.
Well, we got some extra time here. We're out of stories in the lifestyle section. Let's go back to the sports. Look at NFL mock NFL draft projection by USA Today. Might a big name slide out of the top 10? Even as the NFL draft draws closer, any sense of certainty remains elusive. With less than 2 weeks left until the start of the first round on April 23rd in Pittsburgh, the buzz is growing around various possibilities for teams' potential paths. But late insights don't always have the signal-to-noise ratio, leaving a distinct sharplessness to an inherently fluid event. And with so many moving pieces, the true structure for the first round and beyond might not emerge until the first few names are called out. But here's their USA Today's projection for the draft, in their first mock draft guess. And we'll start with the Buffalo Bills, who are drafting at number 26. Jordan Tyson, wide receiver, Arizona State. Taking another receiver after the DJ Moore trade would certainly constitute quite the mea culpa for Brandon Beane, who not long ago vigorously defended what was a clearly flawed plan for building out Josh Allen's receiving corps. But even though he could be a divisive figure who tumbles on draft day due to injury concerns, Tyson still could give the Bills something they've long lacked, a weapon capable of creating a consistent separation on the outside. Number one in the draft will be the Las Vegas Raiders, and they're expected to draft Fernando Mendoza, a quarterback from Indiana. The draft discussion around Mendoza has already shifted to how the Raiders can best set up the quarterback for long-term success. With Kirk Cousins coming aboard, Las Vegas might opt for a more patient approach than teams typically exhibit with number one picks behind center. But Mendoza has given every reason for the Silver and Black to believe he'll be a quick study in their scheme. Still, a satisfactory class depends on more than his mere arrival, as there's significant work to be done in the receiving corps and throughout a defense that looks like liable to yield shootouts. Number two by the New York Jets, David Bailey, an outside linebacker and defensive end from Texas Tech. From January through March, the consensus opinion had Averill Reese was pegged for this spot. Now Bailey is the hot name linked to gangrene, while Reese's body type and forcefulness against the run might make him a more natural running mate for wiry edge rusher Will McDonald. There's not a ton of projection required when it comes to Bailey's ability to pester quarterbacks. For a regime that had to balance long-term growth with showing some proof of concept in year 2 of the build, the savvy Stanford transfer could be just the kind of cornerstone required for the reconfigured front 7 of the Jets. Number 3, the Arizona Cardinals are expected to draft Arvell Reese, a linebacker and defensive end from Ohio State. This setup presents an interesting predicament for Arizona. While Reese's talent and capacity for growth can't be questioned, might the Cardinals be scared off by another hybrid defender given their spotty record for finding a home for such players? Unlocking the full extent of Reese's ability necessitates creativity, but Arizona shouldn't be scared off by past missteps, be they in evaluation or development. The more problematic move would be forcing a pick among the offensive line when the proper value isn't there. Number 4, the Tennessee Titans expected to pick Sonny Styles, linebacker of Ohio State. When Coach Robert Sella, general manager, spoke at a scouting combine about how highly they value arm length at all levels of their defense, many attempted to parse their comments to figure out how they might view this class's top edge rushers. While Bailey or Riss slipping to the spot might simplify Tennessee's process, the same mindset could point the team's decision makers to Styles, who's 6'5" and 244 pounds. Number 5, the New York Giants, Jeremiah Love, running back from Notre Dame. Somewhere between picks number 4-7 seems to be the sweet spot between Love, for Love, who has reignited questions of when it's appropriate for a team with a wider offensive shortcomings to select a running back early in the draft. Number 6, the Cleveland Browns, Carnell Tate, a wide receiver from Iowa State. If Cleveland forgoes a left tackle here, it risks all the capable potential starters being scooped up by the time it selects at number 24. Nevertheless, a team with as many holes as the Browns can't afford to turn down the best available talent at another area of need. Number 7, Washington Commanders, Caleb Downs, safety of Ohio State. After spending big to overhaul its pass rush, Washington still looks due for an additional difference maker on its defense. Number 8, New Orleans Saints, Makai Lemon, a wide receiver at Southern Cal. New Orleans isn't boxed into taking a receiver early, but it certainly would make sense to boost Tyler Show's supporting cast, entering year 2 for quarterback. Number 9, the Kansas City Chiefs, Mansour Delane, a cornerback from LSU. Edge rusher remains the most pressing area of concern for Kansas City's defense, but a team that seldom finds itself drafting this high seems unlikely to compromise on value, given the various avenues available. Number 10, Cincinnati Bengals, Jermad McCoy, a cornerback from Tennessee. Duke Tobin hasn't been shy about declaring his affinity for elite size and athletic traits. Number 11, the Miami Dolphins, Francis Magoy, assistant tackle and guard from Miami, Florida. A calculated, deliberate approach to building back up appears to be the preferred method for the Dolphins. Now let's go on to the Lifeline column, back in the lifestyle section. Style star is Ella Blue Travolta. John Travolta's look-alike daughter, singer and budding actress, turned heads on the pink carpet of the Fashion Trust U.S. formal 4th Annual Awards Ceremony on April 7th in Los Angeles. She exuded class in a black long-sleeve blue marine gown adorned with black flowers. And she's got a nice smile here in the picture. She paired with the look with a slightly messy updo. And so proud of my baby girl, said John Travolta in a photo of his late wife, Cassie Killian's daughter, on Instagram. It's your birthday. Who's celebrating today? Actor Julie Christie turns 86. Artist Dave Gibbons, 77. Actor John Shea, 77. Artist-director Kashiro Otomo, 72. Actor Peter Capaldi, 68. Actor Brad Garrett, 66. Actor Robert Carlyle, 65. Actor Anthony Michael Hall, 58. Actor Adrian Brody, 53. Rapper DeBrat is 52. Actor Sarah Michelle Gellar is 49. Actor Rob McElhenney is 49. Singer Wynn Butler of the Arcade Fire is 46. Actor Skylar Samuels, 32. Actor Abigail Breslin is 30. Here's the horoscopes. Aries, got something to say? Speak up. Mercury is now your sign. You're encouraging to voice a previously undisclosed observation. Taurus, reflecting on the past, what you have done differently. Nostalgic musings come under fire. Gemini, rallying the crew, your new vision inspires others to act. Your excitement is infectious. Cancer, quit examining the matter from every angle. Mercury's entrance to Aries confirms time to put a plan into motion. Leo, new curiosity unlocked. Mercury's entrance to Aries gets you jazzed up on a course of study or travel destination. Virgo, making too many concessions has put you in a compromised position. Need someone to acknowledge your needs? Be blunt. Libra, making a snap decision, impress a loved one with your decisiveness. Scorpio, Mercury's entrance to Aries motivates you to keep on task, even if you have to switch strategies. Sagittarius, clowning around, Mercury's entrance to Aries awakens your inner imp. Creative, childlike ideas percolate. Capricorn, ready to set a new precedent with a loved one, Mercury's entrance to Aries dares you to start the conversation. Aquarius, get ready to be busy. Mercury's entrance to Aries forces you to pick up the pace or communication will fall through the cracks. And Pisces, immediately sold on an idea, Mercury's entrance to Aries highlights the potential of an investment. Well, you have been listening to a reading of USA Today for Tuesday, April 14th, 2026. We read USA Today weekday at noon. For more information, call us at 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been
Jody
and Alan Blackburn.
God.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability